Hello, I'm Chris Williams from Read Comics They're Bad For You, the name of my YouTube channel. Or if you're watching this on BitChute or Library, the name of my channels on those two websites is Comic Freak. Congratulations, everyone! We have been verified that Lucasflim is a complete bunch of twats, because apparently they're going to explain the return of Emperor Palpatine by explaining that he was a clone all of the time. Basically, they're taking the canon explanation from the expanded universe and reusing it in the new novel, when they could have used the expanded universe novel itself, but no. Let's get into this article, shall we? The novelization of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker confirms Palpatine was a clone. The Disney era of Star Wars has frequently used novelizations to tie up loose ends from the films themselves. In the case of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, the film had a startling number of plot holes that writer Ray Carson will surely be hoping to navigate. Yeah, like a minefield, and you don't use a novel to explain what happens in a movie. This is idiotic, as I've explained before, and bad plotting of a movie. Marketing for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker had emphasized the unexpected return of Emperor Palpatine, and moviegoers were eager to learn how Darth Sidious had survived his death in Return of the Jedi. Remarkably, the film avoided explaining it at all. The Emperor hand-waved the question away with a quote from Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some would consider unnatural, he observed. It's generally been assumed Carson's novelization will shed a little more light on matters. Oh, it'll shed some light, all right. It'll shed some light on the fact that the, director J.J. Abrams is a hack. The writers for this movie were, idiots, and Kathleen Kennedy is an agenda-driven troll. Although the novelization isn't officially on sale until March 17th, Lucasfilm Publishing decided to sell advanced copies at this weekend's C2E2 in Chicago, and passages have begun appearing online. The book does indeed confirm that the Emperor's spirit has been transferred into a cloned body. When Kylo Ren arrives on Exegol and encounters Palpatine, he looks closely at the machinery the Emperor is physically attached to and recognizes it from his studies of the Clone Wars. He then deduces Palpatine's dark side spirit is too strong for the clone body and is causing serious degeneration to it. Now, the difference between this and the original novels from the expanded universe is that the clone body could contain Emperor Palpatine's spirit and wasn't destroying it. So he was a youthful version of the Emperor who was at the height of his powers, with a young body that could, go the distance in the fight against Luke Skywalker. So it was pretty much a, dire situation for Luke back then. But here we have a degenerated version of that story, basically manhandled and destroyed by Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy, who basically just gave a big middle finger to the entire fan base with this novel. The reason why Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm released the movie with as few facts about how the Emperor returned was because they wanted to get the movie out, and they hoped that the fact that it was so vague it wouldn't hurt the plot or the people who would want to see it. But apparently, not explaining anything will cause people not to want to see your movie. I mean, honestly, who knew? All the vials were empty of liquid save one, which was nearly depleted. Kylo peered closer. He'd seen this apparatus before, too, when he'd studied the Clone Wars as a boy. The liquid flowing into the living nightmare before him was fighting a losing battle to sustain the Emperor's putrid flesh. What could you give me? Kylo asked. Emperor Palpatine lived after a fashion. Kylo could feel in his very bones that this cloned body sheltered the Emperor's actual spirit. It was an imperfect vessel, though unable to contain his immense power. It couldn't last much longer. Alright, here we have Kylo Ren actually meeting the Emperor in the novel, and as you can see, the entire conversation between the two feels like something trite and not very well thought out. This feels like something we've seen dozens of times before in other novels and other comic books and other movies, only done much better. But it does do one thing. It does give the rumor that Emperor Palpatine had used a Force jump at the end of Return of the Jedi to escape the destruction of the Death Star. It does take that explanation and throw it out the window at least. As well as the explanation that somehow Emperor Palpatine had somehow survived the destruction of the second Death Star and was rescued by his loyalist forces on Exegol, who took him back there. This at least makes those explanations nothing burgers, so we have that to thank God for. There are striking similarities between Palpatine's canon resurrection and his return in the old expanded universe, like Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Tom Vitch's Dark Empire miniseries saw Palpatine return, his spirit migrating to a clone body, and he constructed a vast army that incorporates sophisticated superweapons. George Lucas loved Dark Empire. He considered it the closest thing to his idea of a sequel trilogy, and he gave copies to Lucasflim employees as a Christmas present. The key difference, however, is that in Dark Empire, the clone body was actually able to contain the Emperor's spirit. If Disney had just made the Dark Empire book series into a movie series, they could possibly have made this Disney trilogy a surefire winner. But no, they insisted on letting Kathleen Kennedy and, well, every director that came along make their own version of a Star Wars movie, and then call it a trilogy after the end of it. Because Disney didn't plot out this entire 3-movie trilogy deal beforehand, they just let writers and directors basically take a look at what had come before in the previous movie, and then they'd come up with a script, and then they'd follow that script all the way through, and then the next bunch of creators would come in and decide what to do next. They didn't have any plan for this trilogy. They didn't have one story like The Lord of the Rings that could be adapted and then broken up into 3 novels like the original novel was, and basically take those and make them into movies. No, they just came up with individual stories and then tried to hook them up together as best they could. And that's why this trilogy failed, along with the agenda politics and the other crap they shoved into it. But my point still stands. Exposure to the dark side of the Force has always had a pronounced effect on a physical body, causing an advanced form of decay. That's why many Sith Lords appear cadaverous, because the stronger they become in the dark side, the more notable its effects. Palpatine is the greatest of all the Sith, and it makes perfect sense that no mere cloned body could contain his essence. The novelization subtly hints the Emperor has waited as long as he can, watching as the galaxy fell into chaos once again, but now has no choice but to reveal himself. His cloned body is completely failing him. He's running out of the regenerative formulas that have been keeping him alive all these years, and he needs a new host. It's a nice to have an explanation of sorts, but something of a shame it wasn't in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker itself. Even the writer of the article itself explains that it should have been in the movie. You see it right there. But something of a shame it wasn't in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker itself. Yes, it should have been in The Rise of Skywalker itself, because that was the explanation of how the Emperor came back to life. Not any of this other stories we've heard, not any of these agenda politics, and certainly not all this stuff about how if you hate Star Wars Episode 9, not only do you hate Star Wars, but you're also a racist and misogynist. All these excuses made by SJWs and even the executives at Lucasfilm after the movie came out to try and defend their property. Well, it didn't work, did it? Because not only did Lucasfilm make the critics angry by not continuing the story Rian Johnson made in Episode 8, basically the story that had played up to the agenda politics all these critics really love, they also ended up making everyone who tried to defend this movie look like an idiot, because there was no defending it. How can the Emperor be back when he was killed in Episode 6? How can any of this be happening? How can the Emperor have a gigantic army? Basically, it proved everything the fandom menace were saying about the Disney trilogy right, making it perfectly clear that Disney had no idea how to handle Star Wars or anything related to Star Wars. If you like this video, subscribe. Make sure you're still subscribed, because YouTube is going around unsubscribing people, so make sure you're still subscribed. If you're watching my videos but you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you. Then go over to Library and BitChute and subscribe to my channels on those 2 websites. They're both named Comic Freak. Hit that bell for notifications, hit that like button, and leave some comments down below. And if you could you also please share this video? Share it on Twitter. share it on Reddit, and share it on Facebook. Share it anywhere you think it'll do the most good, because YouTube is not going around promoting their own YouTube creators anymore. So please share this video. Now listen closely. It's that time of the day again. It's plug-in time. Keep checking back in all my future videos for more information on my own upcoming independent comic book scumdogs. I'm Chris Williams, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another video or review.